It seems everyone, everywhere, is thirsty.
I'm going to say this now, as definitively as I can, so you know whether to just click right off this video and find something else to watch if it annoys you. Code Vein is a shallow, primitive example of a Souls-like game, being that it both tries and fails to manufacture a fair and engaging challenge, but also assumes that the player doesn't even know how to dress themselves in the morning. Every attempt it makes to recapture the success of Dark Souls, a game it is clearly a derivative anime parody of, falls flat in the dirt. And yet somehow the attitude of the game towards the player seems to be hugely condescending, and at some points is almost a direct insult to the player's intelligence. Okay, the EO fans have probably left now, so let's have a proper discussion. Let me start from the beginning. What is Code Vein?
It's dry, isn't it?
Code Vein is a sort of action Souls-like JRPG that was published by Bandai Namco and released in September 2019 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and whatever the third option always is. It follows your character, inevitably an anime waifu with the fattest tits the slider can give her, a revenant who seeks to end the curse of unending life and death that is causing your blood-starved cohorts to turn into crazed cannibals, and, well, I mean, it's Dark Souls, basically. It's just a Dark Souls clone, in everything but quality. That's the long and short of it, honestly. Code Vein is a derivative Dark Souls attempt with a thin veneer of anime visuals over the top, shamelessly mimicking much of what made Dark Souls the success that it is, but with little understanding of why it made it so successful. Something very un-Souls-like about Code Vein, however, is the trophy list. It's a fairly easy set of achievements oversaturated with gold and silver awards for tasks that take barely any effort at all, and can often be achieved naturally through basic gameplay, so it's definitely something I'd recommend if you're looking for a quick boost to your PSN score. In fact, some of the silver trophies on offer are rewarded completely passively, just as a result of you hearing dialogue, watching a central character's memories, or receiving gifts from NPC followers, none of which require any effort on your part whatsoever. Besides this, a few collectathons and various ending-related trophies, it was honestly a welcome break for me, and a fun trophy hunt all things considered. I'm gonna say this now. Code Vein is pretty trash. Cool, well, if you can still hear me over the furious click-clack of angry typing weebs, I'd like to qualify this by saying that I definitely recommend you watch a few videos about the game. Democracy, for example, does a pretty interesting solo boss ranking. There are some lore bits and pieces that have probably been analysed beyond all meaning on some niche corner of YouTube somewhere, and the cutscenes might be worth a watch, but I would not recommend you go out of your way to buy, play, and finish this game unless you're looking to grab some trophies. Or unless you like those horrendous classic anime tropes and weird weeby bullshit, which, let's face it, if you clicked on this video, you actually probably do, so sorry about that. Let's get my first point out of the way. Mechanically, Code Vein takes some very heavy inspiration from the Souls series, more specifically the central 3 Dark Souls games with just a sprinkle of Bloodborne here and there. From boot up, you'll start to see where the inspiration lies. The aforementioned cycle of life and death culminates in a hollowing process. Bonfires restore health and can be teleported between. An off-brand Anor Londo will stick out like a sore thumb the second you step into it, and separate maps draw heavily from Bloodborne's Chalice dungeons, just to name a few examples. And you'll learn quickly that whatever Code Vein tries to imitate, it does a pretty terrible job of imitating. The combat is a pretty glaring example of this, and actually made me realise just how crucial queued actions are to fast-paced combat, and how much today's players come to trust and expect a game to take into account their button presses when informing the following actions of the player character. Some games even implement time-saving measures, allowing players to combine 2 actions into one, or stack the effects of 2 actions while lessening the animation time. A good example of this is Dark Souls' Estus Chug. When healing, the animation of the player character involves them rustling in their back pocket for the flask, pulling the flask out of their pocket and up to their lips, taking a drink, returning the flask to their back pocket, and resetting to a default stance. However, if you press to heal again during the chug section of the animation, your character will take a second drink of the Estus, extending the animation by only a tiny amount for double the heal. In Code Vein, however, you press to heal, only for your character to slowly raise their hand, perform a slow healing animation, slowly lower their hand, and return to their original stance. The game will not register another button input until the final frame of said animation has absolutely concluded, and not a frame earlier. The same occurs when trying to start a long attack after finishing a light attack. Your character has to reset to their basic stance before the game will let you, whereas other games will allow you to blend quick and strong attacks into combos. Honestly, it's ass and it's backwards, especially considering that Code Vein definitely encourages a fast-paced fighting style. Most bosses have unlimited stamina and attack in quick flurries, and can damage you through any cover you try to dodge behind, whereas your stamina is extremely limited and takes a good few seconds to restore. You still take damage when blocking, and most buffs, item uses, or heals require you to stand completely still or slow to a super slow walk. It's as though the game expects your fights to be paced like Bloodborne, but with the speed of Dark Souls mechanics. It often makes the experience frustrating, particularly for new players. It is a shame, because there are hints of an extremely fun and experimental fighting style here. The game allows you to use blood codes, essentially pre-stocked builds that, when equipped, automatically respec your stats and abilities, allowing you access to whole sets of different weapons, armor, buffs, and attacks. Swapping around between different codes and assigning yourself different moves to try is a huge amount of fun. It's just such a shame that it slots into such a slow and heavy combat system. One department that Code Vein deviates heavily from Dark Souls in is storytelling and exposition. Code Vein relays its story to you in the most absolute, polar opposite fashion to any Souls title, and therefore in the most anime way possible I've ever seen. In Code Vein, emotions are conveyed through dramatic gasps and weirdly redundant zooms on characters' faces, which, considering they're often concealed with gas masks, seems to be kind of a weird design choice. Story beats, including twists, are randomly announced in cutscenes with no build-up or foreshadowing, and overly sympathetic characters are often roped in minutes before their own untimely deaths, just to try and force some emotion into the narrative. The final boss of the game, some furry emo guy, was apparently some dude I'd happened to just walk past in a prior cutscene. So generic in his appearance that I hadn't given him a second thought at the time. Looking like some kind of stock model that had been slapped together in the final few moments of production. When he appeared in the cutscene preceding the final confrontation, I honestly had to ask who he was supposed to be, because I did not remember. The amount of times the game introduces you to a random character, forces you to sit through their entire life story in one cutscene, makes the other characters announce their undying love for them, and then just kills them off right in front of you, actually starts to hit silly numbers throughout the main story.
I know.
One standout example follows a character that has travelled alongside you throughout the entire game. He accompanies you to one of the final bosses, only to randomly announce that this boss is his long-lost love, and how he was so dedicated to her, and how his heart is broken when he sees the creature she's become. You'll whiz through some more cutscenes, wherein exposition is furiously shoved down your throat. You killed the boss, and then you are carted through more cutscenes, and the game tries to play it off as though it has any actual emotional weight. It becomes weirdly patronising, the amount of times the game tries to force you to care about some cute little kid with a little spaceship backpack or some dainty singer woman, only to immediately kill them off. Like, fuck off, pal. I have plenty of crying to be doing in my own time. I don't need this exhausting emotional manipulation. And before fans of the game pile on and condescend that of course you're missing key information, you're not watching all the Vestige cutscenes, I would like to invite you, and the Vestige cutscenes, to suck my fat dick. The Vestiges are some of the worst methods of storytelling I have ever seen in a video game, and stuffing over 50 of them into a 10-hour story instead of, actually making an effort to weave the narrative properly into the game is lazy game design at its finest. The Vestiges within themselves are lazy too. You wander around on floating islands in a huge black void with the same insipid looping music in the background, looking at still images of events that probably would have been really fun to actually play. Meanwhile, player characters just announce exposition in the background. It is genuinely a single step up from just displaying the URL for the wiki page on screen and telling me to go and read it for myself. It's like an emo version of the It's a Small World ride at Disneyland, just a regretful walking simulator that, even with only a few interactive elements like a puzzle here or a choice there, would be 100 times more engaging. I've noticed that JRPGs have this really stupid habit of telling you, oh shit, yeah, this amazing thing happened a little while ago. We really bonded and we formed some amazing relationships, and honestly we learned and we grew a lot. But it never actually shows you this, so when you're presented with it and told to just roll with it, it seems pointless and a bit insulting. Vestiges are a prime example of that. They force you to sit quietly and read about far more interesting character arcs, story beats, and moral dilemmas than the game itself ever actually presents you with. It has to be a consequence of designer-developer split. The gameplay must have been made first, only for the story to be wedged in during the final few months of production, hence why there's such a stark divide. That is honestly the only justification I can think of, because genuinely I did care about the characters. On my first playthrough, I got the bad ending, and I had to watch my compatriots suffer as a result of my own negligence. And weirdly, I actually did care. I felt sad, and it made me unhappy to see them in such a depressing situation. It made me realise that I did want to learn about the characters and experience their highs and lows, just not through a vestige. So, during my review, I kind of skipped over what is possibly one of the most poorly weighted trophy choices in any game that I have played thus far. Exalted Reputation. The black sheep of the Code Vein trophy list, and one hell of a thorn in my arse crack. Similar to the heirs of the Sun Covenant in Dark Souls, players, both the host and the summon, receive medals for successfully killing bosses during cooperative play. These medals are called Marks of Honor. The more Marks of Honor you collect, the higher your co-op rank, and Exalted Reputation humbly requests that you reach max rank. More specifically, this trophy requires you to successfully co-op 400 bosses. 400. As in 4 and then 2 zeros. To highlight to you just how crazy an expectation this is, there are 17 main game bosses. There are 6 bosses in the Tower of Trials, an endgame area added a little while after release to address this specific problem, and there are roughly 45 bosses throughout the depths, i.e. the Chalice Dungeons knockoff. That's about 68 bosses per playthrough. On the basis that you co-op every single one of them for every single ending you need, either in 4 full playthroughs or the more efficient 3 playthrough method, you'll have 272 Marks of Honor at the absolute maximum. Now, if you somehow manage to co-op 100% of your own bosses, plus co-op every single one of those bosses online with other players, you will finish your Platinum playthrough with all required boss victories under your belt. Now let me explain why this doesn't happen. Whilst farming main game bosses is a fun and exciting method to achieve 400 victories, it's also an insanely unreliable one. Why so unreliable? Because despite having been out less than a year, the replayability of Code Vein is low for most, and the online scene is already dwindling. This means that the majority of people who summon for help are new players who are struggling with the main game, and a disproportionate number of summons will be for one very infamous double boss towards the end of the game. Often this means that if you're lucky enough not to be summoned for someone who will walk into the fight and immediately die, you'll be summoned for someone who will spend all of your health and revives keeping alive throughout the fight, only for them to drop you like a lead weight the second you go down because your resources are spent and you've spent the last few minutes rolling around on the floor with 1 HP. I spent one harrowing Saturday morning trying to farm Marks of Honor and found myself with a grand total of 1 after almost 6 hours of trying, being passed between the same 3 players struggling with one endgame boss to no avail. Like I said, it's fun and exciting, but it is unreliable. Your other option is to farm in the Depths, a series of dungeons available outside the main game that offer bite-sized snippets of gameplay in different environments and against different enemies. Each Depths map will offer a small location to run around in, with between 3 to 5 bosses to challenge. Most bosses will be normal enemies with boss health bars, making them extremely easy to take down, at the cost of being insanely repetitive and boring to traverse. Like, skull-crushingly boring. Like, depressingly boring. The main problem here is that if you're in the Depths, you cannot be summoned into the main game, and vice versa. This generates an unnecessary dilemma. Spend over 100 hours of frustrating grind helping people with the main game, or spend 20 hours of stupendously boring but easy grind in the Depths. It's a trick question. The choice isn't yours to make. It's already been made for you. Other players made this decision long before you even considered picking up a copy of this game. They bank on the Depths, usually the Misty Ruins map, which is fairly easy to collect and boasts 5 whole bosses per roughly 10-minute run, and consequently the co-op is extremely weighted towards this map. The main story will be devoid of experienced players who understand the grind. They're all in the Depths, and even then there are only a few. Most often you'll be sat idle with a distress signal down for a few hours waiting to be assisted. Oh yeah, and it's a silver trophy. Code Vein's method of achievement prioritization is as much a weird mess as its choice of achievements in the first place. Gold trophies are awarded for really inane tasks, such as stopping at every bonfire or collecting every blood code, whereas 20 to 100 hours of co-op grind merits a mere silver. Listening to your co-op partner spout 50 lines of dialogue as you explore, a trophy often passively earned within the first hour of gameplay, is a silver. Finishing the game for the first, second, and third time is a bronze each, a measly 1% per ending. Also, while the list covers many of the core components of gameplay, lots of peripheral tasks are completely ignored by the trophy list. There are swathes of NPCs strewn around each map that, on return, can provide fun and interesting little quests to do. The Tower of Trials, although added late, offers 3 more areas to explore, and the woefully disappointing DLCs each offer new areas, bosses, and even alternate companion costumes and blood codes. I can't help but think that the trophy list would be enriched by quartering the required number of successful co-ops and adding in new trophies that would better encapsulate the full experience of the game, rather than force needless, boring grind. So, now comes the time to try and fabricate some kind of conclusion here. Code Vein is a fumbled attempt at capturing lightning in a bottle, that same spark that saw FromSoft fly to the heights of success, resulting in the genesis of a whole new video game genre, Souls-like. It's impossible to deny that Code Vein delivers on trophy clout. The trophies are accessible, mostly easy, and mostly fun, but also hugely inflated in regards to value. No trophies are truly missable, which is a huge deal for a game that can span up to 4 playthroughs for the platinum, while there are no glitched or broken trophies at time of writing. Moreover, while the game has its flaws, it can certainly become more playable with an ounce of tweaking here and there, and thankfully Vestige cutscenes can be skipped. Honestly, I would recommend this for a trophy hunter looking for an easy platinum run. Unfortunately, for the average player, the sad truth of Code Vein is that its visuals are its greatest strength, so you'll often find yourself exacting the same amount of satisfaction from it by just watching a playthrough on YouTube or buying a tasteful Dakamura. I don't know really. I guess all things considered it's an average game, or even below average, but all the characters have massive tits, so you'll probably buy it anyway.
Pretty thick.